My phone vibrated against the cold steel of the nurse's station at 7:14 p.m. on the dot. I glanced down without much thought, probably a lab alert, maybe a staffing update. Instead, it was an email from my father, Brian. The subject line was oddly polite. Update regarding summer reunion. I rubbed sanitizer into my hands, the sharp chemical bite stinging my nose, and opened it. The message was short, efficient, almost professional. Due to limited space at the main house this year, we won't be able to host you during the reunion weekend. Please plan accordingly if you'll be nearby. That was it. The hospital sounds the beeping monitors, the rolling carts, the low chatter collapsed into a dull blur. I wasn't just excluded. I was processed. Like an expired vendor. Contract terminated. What made it almost funny was the truth no one acknowledged. That house still stood because of me. But under those fluorescent lights, I didn't feel hurt. I felt something colder, cleaner. The switch that flips during a code blue. Emotion off. Action on. Have you ever felt like the extra in your own family's story? If you have, you already know this feeling. I didn't slam my phone. I didn't cry in a bathroom stall. I didn't fire off a message demanding answers. Panic solves nothing. In medicine, when someone is bleeding out, you don't debate how it started. You stop it, clamp it, cut if necessary. I sat on the vinyl stool, the seat squealing softly, and unlocked my phone again. This time, I didn't open my email. I opened my bank app. Scheduled transfers. There it was lined up neatly for the first of the month, like it had been for 5 years straight. $3,500 for the main mortgage. Every month, $42,000 a year. $210,000 total. I stared at the number. It stopped looking like money and started looking like a mass on an X-ray. Something unhealthy. Something that had been growing quietly while I pretended it was normal. My father had called it our legacy. A smart investment. He needed a co-signer for the renovation loan, $180,000 to fix the roof, rebuild the deck, rewire the place. His credit couldn't handle another hit after business failure number 3. So I stepped in. The reliable one. The daughter with the stable job and flawless credit. I signed. I automated the payments. I told myself it was temporary. But staring at that screen, it finally clicked. I'd fallen for the sunk cost trap. Keep paying because you've already paid too much to stop. I wasn't investing in property. I was subsidizing acceptance. I thought I was buying a seat at the table. But love isn't a subscription. You don't pay monthly just to avoid being erased. I tapped the transfer. Options appeared. Edit. Skip. Cancel series. I chose cancel series. The app asked if I was sure. Yes. No hesitation. No spike in my pulse. The line vanished. 5 years of obligation gone in a single second. A clean cut. No bleeding. I slid my phone back into my scrubs and took a deep breath. Antiseptic. Old coffee. Relief. The anger would come later, I knew that. But right then, all I felt was the quiet satisfaction of a problem handled correctly. They wanted distance. Fine. But when you cut off the source, don't be surprised when the lights flicker. I went back to the floor. Patients needed me. Real emergencies. And for the first time, I stopped trying to save people who were holding my head underwater. The reunion weekend arrived like bad weather. I didn't travel. I stayed in my apartment, 22 floors above the city, wrapped in glass, steel, and silence. Every inch of it paid for with my own labor, my own hands, my own sanity. I made tea and did what I knew I shouldn't. I opened Instagram. I told myself it was curiosity. Truth was, it was the instinct to press a bruise and see if it still hurt. It did. The first story was from my brother, Jared. He stood on the massive ocean-facing deck, shouting into the wind, beer in hand. Family time is the best time. Behind him stretched the Atlantic gray, endless, beautiful. The same deck that cost $45,000 to reinforce 3 years earlier. The one I paid for directly when my father's card was declined. Jared laughed and turned the camera, unaware or uninterested in who wasn't there anymore. There was my mother, Susan, head tipped back in laughter, a glass of Chardonnay catching the light. My father, Brian, stood at the grill like he owned the horizon. Apron on, smile practiced. Cousins I hadn't seen in years drifted through the frame. Aunts and uncles I knew would later say we assumed you were working. It wasn't a gathering. It was a performance. And what hit me hardest wasn't their joy. It was how perfectly my absence fit. No empty space where I should have been. No awkward pause. No chair left open out of habit. The scene flowed as if I'd never been part of it at all. They didn't miss me. They benefited from me. I tapped into a photo my mother had posted. The caption read, "So blessed to preserve this legacy for our children," plural. Yet only one child was there. That's when the anger arrived. Not loud, not explosive, cold, precise. It settled in my chest and traveled outward, steadying my hands instead of shaking them. They were drinking wine on a deck I financed, sleeping beneath a roof I insured, toasting a legacy underwritten by my 12-hour shifts in trauma. I finally understood my role. I wasn't family. I was infrastructure. The wiring behind the walls. The plumbing no one thanks unless it breaks. Necessary. Invisible. Expected to work quietly forever. I closed the app. No comments. No likes. I placed my phone face down on the granite counter. The silence in my apartment changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was loaded. Heavy with possibility. They thought they'd erased me, thought they could ghost me out of my own life. But ghosts don't disappear. They haunt. And I was about to become the worst kind. The one whose name is on the paperwork. Monday. Arrived with vibration. My phone rattled against the nightstand at 6:30 a.m. I was already awake, coffee in hand, watching the city stretch and yawn below my windows. I let it ring. Again. And again. On the fourth call, I answered. I didn't greet him. I just listened. What the hell is going on with the bank? Brian snapped. No hello. No pretense. His voice was thin, sharp with panic, the sound of a man living one step past his means. The mortgage transfer bounced. Insufficient authorization. Call your bank and fix this glitch. Now. It's not a glitch, I said calmly. I canceled it. Silence. 3 seconds of nothing. You what? I canceled the transfer. I'm not paying the mortgage anymore. His voice shot up. Are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea what you've done? We just hosted the reunion. We have vendors, the caterer, the tent company. Those checks cleared today. If that mortgage money isn't there to float the account, we're going to overdraft. The truth landed harder than any insult. He wasn't just using my money for the house. He was using it as a slush fund. My mortgage payment was underwriting a party I'd been banned from. That sounds stressful, I said evenly, but it's not my problem. Don't be petty, Morgan, he snapped. You're upset about the invite. It was a logistical issue. Susan felt awful, but we had limited bedrooms. We had investors, people important to Jared's new venture. We had to prioritize family. Family, I repeated. I've been funding this family for 5 years. I paid for the uniforms, built the stadium, and you benched me. Stop being dramatic. He scoffed. Just transfer the money and we'll talk later. If you don't, you're only hurting yourself. You need us. I laughed. Not kindly. Dad, look around you. Look at the deck, the roof, the wine in your fridge. I don't need you. You're standing inside my charity. He exploded. You ungrateful. I'm hanging up now, I said. Good luck with the vendors. I ended the call. My hand trembled, not from fear, but from adrenaline, from finally saying what had been true for years. He thought he had power, thought being the patriarch meant control. He didn't realize the roles had reversed. He wasn't the asset anymore. He was the liability. And liabilities get liquidated. I didn't wait for him to call back. I dialed a number saved under emergency professional. David picked up on the second ring. A forensic accountant. Expensive. Quiet. Surgical. The kind of man people hire when the truth is about to ruin someone. You don't call for small talk. He said, "What's wrong?" "I need you to look into a property," I said. "The family estate in Maine. I co-signed a renovation loan 5 years ago. I need its current financial status, and I need you to look for any irregular income tied to that address. Define irregular," David said, already sharpening. "I think they're spending money they don't officially have." I replied, "I want to know where it's coming from. Give me 2 hours. He called back in 90 minutes. I was pacing my living room when the phone rang. The city outside smeared into motion. "You were right," David said. "Actually, you were more than right. I found something criminal." My stomach went still. "Tell me, that property isn't just a residence," he continued. "It's listed as a luxury vacation rental. High-end platform. Name, the Cliffside Estate. Active for 18 months. I stopped pacing. "Peak season is $10,000 a week," he went on. "Booked solid from June through September." I swallowed. "Whose name is it under?" "Not your father's," David said. "An LLC registered in Delaware." There was a pause. Then, "Jared Ventures LLC. My brother. Unemployed. Finding himself. Running a 6-figure rental business out of the house I was paying for." "How much?" I asked. My voice barely carried. David didn't hesitate. "Based on the booking calendar. An average rates conservative numbers, they cleared at least $150,000 last year alone. The room tilted. "And that income," he continued, "was never declared on the property taxes. None of it went toward the principal on the renovation loan you co-signed." Something inside me went very still. This wasn't neglect. This wasn't entitlement. It was theft. They were monetizing a property backed by my credit, funneling the profit into their pockets and leaving me chained to the debt, living large inside a castle mortgaged by my name. "Send me everything," I said. "Screenshots, bookings, LLC records, all of it." There was a pause on the line. "Morgan," David said carefully, lowering his voice, "if you move forward with this, it's fraud. Serious fraud. Your brother could go to prison." I stared out at the skyline glass towers, cold sunlight, sharp edges. I thought of the email. "We cannot accommodate you." He put himself there. I said quietly, "I'm just turning on the lights." I ended the call. There was no sadness left, no hurt, just clarity. The infection wasn't surface level. It was systemic. And systems like that don't heal. They get removed. I drove north. The city thinned into suburbs. Suburbs dissolved into highway. Highway narrowed into pine-lined roads, cutting through coastal Maine for hours. No music. No podcasts. Just the steady hum of the engine and the quiet rehearsal of inevitability. I reached the estate as the sun dipped low, stretching long, bruised shadows across the gravel drive. 3 cars were parked outside. My father's SUV, my mother's sedan, Jared's convertible. The convertible he absolutely couldn't afford. I didn't park politely. I pulled straight in front of the garage and blocked them all. I walked the stone path I'd paid to have relayed to summers ago. The front door solid oak, dramatic, heavy-weighted for me like a dare. I took out my key. For a brief second, I wondered if they'd changed the locks. They hadn't. Arrogance is lazy. The lock turned. The door opened. The house smelled like stale wine and expensive candles. Familiar yet foreign. I stepped into the great room. They were all there. Jared sprawled on the custom leather sectional, laughing at his phone. My mother flipping through a magazine. My father at the wet bar, pouring a drink like the world was still obedient. They froze. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was dense, pressurized. "Morgan?" My mother stood abruptly, clutching the magazine like a shield. "What are you doing here?" "I have a key," I said evenly. "It's my house." Jared snorted. not even bothering to stand. It's not your house. You just co-signed. That doesn't make you the owner. And you weren't invited. I walked to the coffee table and dropped a thick manila folder onto the glass. The sound landed like a judge's gavel. Actually, I said, it makes me the primary financial guarantor. And since the mortgage payment bounced yesterday because I canceled it, and since you've defaulted on the loan by operating an unregistered commercial business out of a residential property, I paused. Let the words settle. I'm securing the asset. My father slammed his glass down. Commercial business? What are you talking about? I opened the folder. The first page was a full-color printout. The Cliffside Estate, hosted by Jared Ventures LLC. About $150,000 in revenue last year. I said, looking directly at my brother. None of it reported. None of it applied to the mortgage. Jared's face drained of color. That was just a side thing. He stammered, helping with expenses. You didn't help with expenses, I corrected. You profited off my liability. That's fraud. I turned to my father. And you allowed it? This is a family home. He shouted, face flushing red. You're trying to steal it out from under us. I'm not stealing anything, I said. I'm repossessing it. The room shifted. Annoyance curdled into fear. They finally understood I wasn't there to argue. I wasn't there for an apology. I was there to end it. You have until sunset, I said. Pack what you can carry. The silence afterward wasn't calm. It was the hollow moment before collapse. My mother broke first. Not with screaming. With strategy. Her eyes filled. Hands trembled. Voice softened into that familiar wounded whisper she'd used my whole life. Morgan, please, she said, reaching toward me and stopping when I didn't flinch. We're your family. We just had a party. The fridge is full. Where are we supposed to go? I don't know, I said. Maybe rent an Airbnb. I tilted my head. I hear Jared knows the market. This is cruel, my father snarled, stepping between us. You're doing this because you weren't invited to a barbecue. You're evicting your own parents over your ego. I'm evicting you over fraud, I said calmly. There's a difference. I'm not leaving, Jared said, folding his arms. He tried to look defiant. He looked like a kid caught stealing from the register. I've got tenants coming next week, Jared said, his voice cracking. A corporate retreat. They already paid $6,000 upfront. I can't just cancel. You already did, I replied calmly. I contacted the platform and are a go. I sent them the deed and the police report number for identity theft tied to the utility accounts. The listing is suspended. The refund is coming straight out of your account. Jared's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, read the screen, and whatever fight he thought he had drained out of him completely. You reported me. He whispered. Not yet, I said. I filed to establish ownership. The fraud charges? Those are still pending. I placed my phone on the coffee table and tapped the screen. Speaker on. One ring. This is Catherine. My attorney's voice filled the room. Cool. Precise. Final. Catherine. I said, I'm with the occupants. They're refusing to vacate. Understood. She replied. If they do not vacate voluntarily within the hour, we will proceed with criminal charges against Jared Ventures LLC for wire fraud, bank fraud, and grand larceny. She didn't pause. Given the documented amount over $150,000, we are looking at a mandatory minimum of 10 years in federal prison. Brian and Susan will also be named as accessories, as they knowingly facilitated the operation on a property they did not own. Silence collapsed the room. The refrigerator hummed. Wind rattled the windows. 10 years? My mother gasped, turning toward Jared. Brian. My father looked at me. He wasn't looking for his daughter anymore. Not the one who bent herself smaller for approval. He was looking at someone else entirely. Pack the car, he said, his voice hollow. Dad. Jared started. Pack the car. Brian roared. Do you want to go to prison? Because she will do it. Look at her. She will dot they were gone in 40 minutes. I stood by the door and watched. I didn't help. I didn't interfere. I bore witness. Clothes went into garbage bags. Wine bottles disappeared into boxes. Leftover catering trays were stacked like spoils from a failed campaign. It was frantic, undignified, exactly proportional to how they treated me. When the last bag was shoved into the SUV, my father stopped on the porch. The wind tugged at his hair, making him look smaller, older. "You've destroyed this family," he said. "No," I replied, closing the heavy oak door. "I just stopped paying for it." I turned the deadbolt. The click echoed through the house. It was the loudest sound I'd ever heard, and it sounded like freedom. The silence after they left was complete. The house once loud with entitlement was now just wood, stone, and air. I walked through the room slowly. Scuff marks on the floor where furniture had been dragged. Empty wine bottles rattling in the recycling bin. The outline of a family I had spent 5 years trying to purchase my way into. I cleaned for 3 days. I scrubbed floors until my knees ached. Washed the windows until the salt haze vanished. Stripped the beds and donated the linens. I wasn't cleaning. I was preparing the space for something new. Something better. I didn't sell the house. That would have been logical, clean, financially correct. But I wasn't interested in logic anymore. I was interested in purpose. On Friday morning, I called Catherine. "I want to restructure ownership," I said. "I'm not selling. I'm donating use of the property." "Donating?" she asked. "To whom?" "To the people who are drowning," I said. "I want to turn it into a retreat for crisis nurses, trauma surgeons, first responders, people who save everyone else and have nowhere to go when they finally break." Silence. Then her voice softened. "That's generous." "I'll cover operating costs," I said. "It's cheaper than supporting a family that despised me." I renamed the place. It wasn't the cliffside estate anymore. It was the Haven. 6 months later, the first guest arrived, and a nurse from Chicago. She'd worked through the worst of the pandemic. Hadn't slept through the night into yours. I met her at the door not as an owner, not as a landlord, but as a colleague. I handed her the key, told her the fridge was stocked, told her the ocean was hers. When she cried, I didn't rush to fix it. I didn't offer cliches. I let her cry. Because sometimes healing starts when you're finally allowed to fall apart somewhere safe. My family tried to reach out after the local paper ran the story. They saw the article, the praise, the generosity. They probably saw a way back in. I didn't answer. I didn't read the letters. A sanctuary has rules. And the first rule is this. You don't let the wolves back inside the walls you built to keep them out. Months passed. The Haven filled with exhausted healers who needed a place to remember why they started. Nurses who had held too many hands during final breaths. Paramedics who still heard sirens in their sleep. Surgeons who had learned to bury their losses in silence. They came broken. They left breathing. And every time I walked through those halls, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not pride exactly. Not revenge. Peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop pouring yourself into people who only know how to take. I stood on that deck one evening, the same deck from Jared's Instagram story, and watched the Atlantic turn silver under a dying sun. The wind carried salt and the faint sound of laughter from inside, where two trauma nurses were sharing a bottle of wine and stories they'd never told anyone. This was what the house was always meant to be. Not a monument to one family's ego. A refuge for the ones who give everything and ask for nothing. I pulled out my phone and deleted my father's contact, then my mother's, then Jared's. No ceremony, no hesitation, just clean cuts, the kind that finally let you heal.